Welcome to my tutorial about the sequencer functionality of Arturia's Keystep. I'm going to talk only about the sequencer. I won't talk about the setup, nor about what other tasks the Keystep can take over in your studio, nor about questions concerning MIDI or the MIDI control center. Those matters will be dealt with in other videos later. First of all, I switched the device to sequencer mode. You'll find the switch here in the upper left corner. Down is arpeggiator, up is sequencer mode. Then I choose a sequencer bank where Keystep shall store the sequence I'm going to type in, and I'll choose the first one, bank 1, the one of 8 possible banks. Bank 1 now. My sequence shall have a time division of 1/4, a quarter note. In other words, 4 steps of the sequence make 1 bar. Each beat occupies a sequencer step of its own, so I switch to 1/4. Here, the leftmost position of the middle knob. I choose a middle speed here with the rate knob at 12 o'clock. There is, by the way, there is another more intuitive way to adjust speed. I'll talk about it later in this video. One important thing is I control the switches at the back of the Keystep here. They must be switched to internal sync, otherwise the sequencer will not start without getting a clock signal from another device or from a DAW, and I don't want that because I'm going to use the Keystep standalone without computers and DAWs and without any other sequencers or controllers today. All right. Well, let's make a first sequence and let's do it step by step. I push the record button here. And my Keystep is now ready. It's ready to store the first step of my sequence. If I push a key now, here on the keyboard, the correspondent note will be stored as step 1 of my sequencer. If there is already a sequence stored here at the same bank, at bank number 1, then it will be lost when I push my first key. Okay, let's play some notes. Let me make a first short, simple sequence. That's it. Shall be enough for our first example. To finish the sequencer, I push the stop button. And to make the Keystep play my sequence, well, what a surprise, I push the play button. I hope my Volca FM, which I am using at the sound module here, doesn't run crazy again as it did yesterday. Oh, it works. All right. The sequence is now stored and plays. Okay, it's stored in my Keystep now, and even if I switched off the electricity, the power supply, it will not get lost. It will still be stored here in this unit. I have to leave alone all keys of the keyboard to get to the next step of the sequencer. As long as at last one key is still pushed down, the Keystep will store all notes I play at the same step of the sequence until the capacity of one step is reached. So let me show that. I switch the sequencer to bank 2 because eventually I'm going to use the first sequence again later. I don't know yet. And now I hit some keys and sometimes not lifting my lazy fingers up from the keyboard completely. So let's start. Okay, And, well, let's listen to the result. Well, I think you've got what I mean. I can directly, on the other hand, of course, can directly type a chord in, and each chord will occupy its own step then. For example, like that. I don't switch the key bank because the last sequence, I think, is useless. Okay, a little bit unclean, but let's listen to it. It's not what you might have expected. It's the chords I've played, but without any rhythm. By the way, I use the Korg Volca FM as a sound module in this video. But now let's come to the question of rhythm and linked notes. But before I talk about rests and linked notes, I'd like to tell you some important data about the keystep. You know already that there can be up to 8 individual sequences stored in the device, and each sequence can contain up to 16 steps, what is, for example, 16 bars at a time division of a quarter note per step, or 4 bars at a time division of a 16th note per step, and so on. One single step can house up to 8 notes, and which are played back at the same time, and you can produce really mighty chords with 8 notes. I will talk about chords, by the way, again later in this video. But what happens if I type in a note number 9? Well, it simply is not stored. But what is this note number 9? Which of the 9 notes will get lost? The last one I played, the first one, or the highest one? Okay, let's start and try it. Okay, it's the highest one. Sorry, it's the last one. It's the highest one as well in this example. So the last one I play. But what if I press, let's say, a lot of keys at the same time? Well, not that it's really important, I think, because I don't know anybody who can play a 9-note chord. Well, it seems kind of random, as we will see later. But I will try it. I will just use this wonderful musical instrument to play more than 8 notes at the same time. Okay, as I told you, it's kind of random which note vanishes. We can't hear this this mass of notes, but a look at the MIDI control center shows that it's sometimes this note, sometimes that note. Maybe that I have not really pressed all keys at the same time, exactly at the same time, but well, never mind. It's not that important, I think. Well, all right. Programming rests now. Basically, you store a rest to a step of the sequencer by pressing the tab button instead of a key of the keyboard. And to make the rest last more than only one single step, simply press the tab button more than only once. Each time you press the tab button, the device jumps to the next step of the sequencer. Well, let's do it. And so on and so on. Let's stop it again. If you want to last one note longer than one step, let's call it a link node, you have to use the tap button again, but this time you have to hold the notes, the keys you want to be linked to the next sequencer step while pushing the tap button. All right, let's go for it. At first no linked notes and then with linked notes. I use the same sequencer bank. We don't need the last recorded sequence, I think. Okay. All right. And what about a bit of legato? Well, just push the tap button with the sequencer switch to record mode, of course, and hold it down the whole time while playing the notes which you want to be played back legato. Let's do this as well. Some legato notes, some notes not legato. Okay. Okay. All right. If some of the notes shall be longer, shall occupy more than only one step, as we did a minute ago, simply play them as often as the number of steps they shall occupy, because consecutive legato notes, which have the same MIDI note number, are nothing else than a long note of that MIDI note number. Let's do it and demonstrate it. So. All right. Well, so far the basics about setting up a sequence step by step. Let's talk about some playback functions before I demonstrate a different method of making a sequence, better say, changing. With the gate function here, I determine how much of the time of duration of a step a note will sound with the gate length for example 10, the shortest one here. I get a kind of staccato effect. I set the gate value by pressing Shift and, well, the corresponding key. So let's say this one. Sorry. Yeah, quite short. Let's make a longer one, or the longest. All right. The gate length doesn't affect tight notes or notes being played legato. The tie function and the legato function are superior to the gate function. Let me demonstrate this. I'll make a new, I can change, no, sorry. Okay. So, nothing changes. You see, and here tie and legato override the gate. It's always the maximum amount of gate. The swing function here enables me to create shuffled rhythms by making the first step of the sequence longer and the second one shorter, and so on. The first, the third, fifth, and seventh, and so on steps are longer, and the second, the fourth, the sixth, the eighth, and so on are shorter. I adjust the swing factor, once again by holding Shift and corresponding and hitting, pressing the corresponding key. So let's start the sequence. Yeah, it's tight, but it doesn't matter. Legato. Laid back. And switching off is here. Okay, all right. Both the gate and the swing factors are stored with each of the 8 sequences here individually, so every sequence can have its own gate and swing constellation, and it's stored like the notes are. Well, is it still necessary to say that I can change the time division of the sequence even after I have stored it? Well, okay. The keyboard can be in one of 2 different modes, the transpose mode or the keyboard mode. In transpose mode, written here under octave minus, hitting a key on the keyboard while the sequence is played back, makes the key step transpose the running sequence, with its first note being the key you have pressed. Let me demonstrate that. Important to know is that the sequence is transposed immediately, even if you hit the key in the middle of the running sequence, causing that all following notes of the sequence are transposed. So here, let me show this. No, oh, no. Okay, start. The second possible mode of the keyboard the key step is the keyboard play mode, here written under octave plus. If I press the key in keyboard play mode, it is played additionally to the running sequence. So let me do this. Yeah, you can switch between these 2 modes by pressing and holding the Shift key, and pressing the octave minus button to get into transpose mode. The keyboard is in transpose mode right now, so I'll change it to keyboard play mode. So shift and octave minus. I start the sequence. And so on and so on. Okay. Well, from time to time, my Korg gets a trigger impulse and starts its own sequence. I have to stop it manually then. I'm sorry for that. So you can switch between these two modes by holding Shift and pressing the correspondent button octave minus for transpose mode, keyboard transpose mode, and octave plus for keyboard play mode. One last thing about these things. Even if MIDI is not a matter of interest in this tutorial, it shall be mentioned that we can send as displayed additional notes on the keyboard in a keyboard play mode via MIDI channel, via another MIDI channel to another device than the device which is playing the sequence, the running sequence here. So the sequence and the additional played note can be produced by different devices using different MIDI channels. Sometimes you may want to change the time division during running a sequence, but you certainly don't want to hear the mess occurring while turning the time division knob. Let me demonstrate even that. Okay, well, simple. Just hold down Shift, choose your destination time division. Let's say 1, and let Shift go. No mess by turning as long as you hold down Shift. Leave it, and you are in the destination time division. Yeah, and last thing, let me stop it. Last thing concerning playback, by pressing and holding the Shift button and pressing play while the sequence is still running, it makes the keystep start this sequence from the beginning again and skipping the so far not played part of the sequence. Let me demonstrate even this. Shift and holding it down, play, and so on and so on and so on. Okay. And again, my Korg worker, I have to change the setup a little bit. All right, let's talk about loop recording now. First of all, there is no way to record a sequence from scratch by playing live. We can only change an existing sequence by letting it run and playing the changes in live. And there is also no way of appending an existing sequence by adding steps live. I'm going to talk about appending existing sequences later in this video. There is a way, but not live. The basic scheme of adding a sequence by playing live is simple. While the sequencer is in record mode and the sequencer is running, we play the new notes on the keyboard. Each of the played notes is stored at the step which follows the keystroke. The played notes or rests, I can even substitute the content of a step by a rest, they substitute the existing ones, it substitutes the existing content of the step. Well, let me demonstrate it. To get into the loop recording mode, I press the play button. And the append button. Yes, of course, the record button, sorry. And you hear there is a mistake in this sequence, and I want to substitute this. And it's substituted. And I can substitute some other notes. Or a chord. And so on and so on and so on. I think you've got it. All right. Well, not that interesting, I think. It will be helpful if you produce an external signal that gives you the beginning of a bar or even clicks at every beat. Okay, but it's not that interesting. Let me demonstrate this external signal thing by using the metronome of my CHORD Volca FM. But I will use the metronome click of the CHORD Volca FM while I demonstrate one certain technique which I really like. There is some use in it. I record a sequence, pre-record a sequence with a certain number of steps, let's say 10 here, and I record only rests. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Stop. So I have a fixed length of 10 steps. Let's listen to it. We will hear only the metronome. Yes, the metronome coming from the CHORD Volca FM. By the way, of course, you can use any other device. You can use a drum machine. Sorry, it's early in the morning. You can use a drum machine or something else to give you this signal. Now, I can change to a loop recording, and I will, and play live 10-step sequence and change it as often as I want until I have something what I like. I've changed the sound of the CHORD Volca FM to a kind of bass sound. Okay. All right, I think you've got what I mean. There are some helpful techniques which make life easier when you are doing loop recording. You will have quite long sequences sometimes. Remember, there are 64 possible steps in the sequence, and having to wait until the sequence has ended and jumps back at its beginning may be quite uncomfortable sometimes, therefore. And, well, simply press and hold the Shift button and press the play button again, and the sequence will jump back to the beginning at once without leaving the record mode. Let's do this. Okay. You see? Sorry. I have to change into the record mode, of course, to demonstrate it. So now I'm in loop recording mode. I could change notes, but I don't want this now. I want just to show you the jumping back without leaving the record mode. Okay, you see the record mode is still active. Okay. And of course you can change the time division and the rate to make playing and recording a bit easier. As I told you at the beginning, neither the time division nor the rate are fixed and start with your sequence. Loop recording mode. And now it may be easier to type in the right notes, but I think this speed is still quite comfortable anyway. Okay. Another function which may make life easier is the way how the tap button and the record button blink while the sequencer is running and the record mode is active. The tap button blinks at every beat, independent from what time division you have chosen. Every beat meaning 4 times per bar in a 4-to-4 bar, every quarter note. Every quarter note. But the record here, the record button blinks at every step at the sequencer, which can be quite often if you have, for example, chosen a 1/16 or even smaller time division. Let me show this. So, every quarter note, I'm at one quarter note per beat, so they blink at the same time. But now I change, and you see the record button blinks differently. Every quarter note, every step. Every quarter note, every step. Every quarter note, every step. 16 times, 4 times a bar, 1/16th time division. All right. Well, maybe helpful or maybe not. I personally prefer acoustical signals to optical ones. Let me mention that the Keystep records velocity values as well, not only the notes, a single or in chords, but also the velocity you hit the keys at. You hear it when you have the velocity sensitive sound device attached to the Keystep. Well, appending steps to an existing sequence. We know that we cannot append in loop recording mode, but there is a way to append to an existing sequence by doing it step by step. I just type in a short new sequence. Okay. Yes, I start now the sequencer again by pressing the play button. Then I press Shift and hold it. Then I press the record button and then I let go the Shift button and the sequence will continue to play, but don't care about that. Every note you type in using the keyboard or every rest you type in using the tap button will append to the existing sequence. No matter, append means it will be added to the end as an additional note, no matter when during the running sequencer you have typed the note in. Okay, let's start. So start the sequencer. You hear the metronome from the Volca FM. Then I press the Shift and hold it, and I press the record button. Then I let go Shift, and now I can append. So this my sequence ends at B sharp. So I say it's added. Okay, and so on. You can even append legato notes or tie consecutive notes using the technique I showed you earlier in this video. Well, quite nice. The opposite, deleting notes at the end of the sequence, is also possible. Pressing and holding Shift and then pressing the stop button makes the last step of the sequence vanish into nirvana. Yeah, let me do it while the sequencer is running. So pressing the Shift, pressing and holding the Shift, and stop as often as I want to delete notes from the end of the sequence. And that's it. Last thing about the sequencer is setting the tempo, the speed, by pressing Tab. The Tab button sets the speed in quarter notes in beats. Each time the tap on the button presents one beat. So by tapping fast, you set a fast speed, and by tapping slowly, you set a slowly speed. Let's demonstrate it. And what's more, so for example, you can listen to a piece of music and tapping the button according to the music you are listening to. Keystep will adjust its speed to the speed of the piece of music. What's more, the sequencer doesn't need to be playing when you adjust the speed this way. Let me tap in something fast and start the sequencer now. You remember it was playing slowly. Now it's fast. Slowly again. Okay. So the speed reaches from 30 beats per minute to 240 beats per minute. Please notice that when you turn the rate here, the rate knob, you override the speed you have adjusted by tapping the tap button. So, for example, when you have this speed and you want to make it a little bit faster, but you have the rate knob in middle position, look what happens. So the middle position, and in that moment when you turn the knob, the value of the knob overrides the speed you have tapped in. The same in the other way around. So let me make it very slowly. So, and I tap in a faster beat. And now I want to make it slowlier a bit only, but when I turn the knob, it's faster a bit only. It gets slowlier. So when I wanted to make it faster, of course. Once again. Make it a little bit faster, but at first it gets slowlier because the knob position overrides my depth in speed. Okay. Well, that's done. That's all about Keystep's sequencer you need to know. I'd like to dedicate some words to the CHORD mode at the end of today's video. It's not directly related to the sequencer though. You can construct a chord with up to 16 notes using Keystep's CHORD Mode. To activate this the CHORD mode, press Shift and hold it, and press Hold and hold it as well, and then you can play in up to 16 notes. I won't play 16 notes now. All right. By playing one single key on the keyboard, you can play this chord or transpose it. And you can even record it in the sequencer. Let's play it. And so on. Okay, and so on. But if your chord contains more than 8 notes, only 8 notes are stored in the sequencer, as you know already. Please notice as well that by switching off the keystep, or after switching the keystep off, this chord will be lost again. You cannot store it in a sequencer bank or something like that. Yes, transposing I showed you, for example in live situations or something like this. Yeah, to leave the chord mode, press Shift and hold again, and then you are in normal mode. Well, let it be enough for today. Enjoy your life and Modular City. And, well, yes, perhaps you want to visit my website, www.rofilm-media.net, where there is a lot of more of information about making music and sound design and synthesizers and VSTs and. Well, again, enjoy your day. Have a good time. Bye, Rolf.